what if there are gifted individuals who have more than one area that they want to explore, or maybe more than one passion about learning, or one great interest? Is it possible to be exploring more than one, or to be following more than one path?
It definitely is possible for some, especially if they call it multi-gifted, multi-intelligence. We have those who are also artists, who are also good at math. And I think that it's important to realize that it's possible for someone to be good at, more than one area. I've seen learners who were like really good at writing, and they just got told off to not bother with that because they wanted them to do something else, which people deem to be more promising. Did you know that you could do both? You could be a scientist and an author. Whoever said you can't, right? There are some people who can, and they can manage their time and their interests. And I think that's important for teachers to be aware of that.
Vi Hart is a young woman who initially, I believe, was a musician. And when she graduated her studies in music, also was very talented at mathematics. She ended up making videos that are stop motion videos explaining complex mathematical concepts at an elementary level in a very entertaining format. Technology, art, clearly her communication skills. And she, I believe, was working for Khan Academy. And I mean, talk about multi potentials and bringing them all together. That is a name that comes up to mind for me. And I always use her videos with my students. So multi potentialites can sometimes combine different paths to forge a new way that I'll be aware of.
Yeah.
Or
And
not have even thought of as an opportunity.
Yeah. And I think that intersection between all of our passions, there's this one thing that, combines it all as well. And that's something worth exploring as well, where things intersect. And I have people who are multi-potentialites sort of being looked down by other people because they naturally are able to transfer skills from one skill set to another in a job. But other people may not be able to do that. And they assume that, no one else can. It's like such a waste. You've been in this field for so long and you're just going to drop it, that's just like a dumb idea. Yeah. But there are people who are able to bring one skill set to the other. I think they've got like Michael Jordan, who used basketball and then explored baseball. It goes back to our message of there's no one size fits all for gifted learners.
So Florence, as we're talking about how to help our learners, maybe we should talk first about how learning.
And also, I'm also wondering how different is that for gifted learners? When we talk about this, how they learn, and so we could maybe try to help them better and understand them better.
So the basic steps of learning occurring in the brain are that the input all around us, the sensory input, comes in first to our sensory memory, and then what we take in and don't just ignore, that if we pay attention to it in our sensory memory, then goes into our working memory. And then we're holding that for a few seconds. Maybe we can hold 5 to 7 or even 10 or 12 items. It's more as one matures and gains awareness. Then from working memory, those details or items of information, those can be encoded into long-term memory and learned and kept. And then if we don't forget those, then we can retrieve those details, those memories, those learned bits of information back into our working memory. We can rehearse them and remember. And then those are items we've learned. So from sensory memory, by paying attention, we can bring them into working memory. And then by rehearsing and practicing, we can bring those into long-term memory and then retrieve those learnings.
Yep. So I hear a lot about working memory. Is that the main thing here that we want to focus on and how it affects gifted learners?
Well, I see it as a crucial step because the working memory is what is necessary for students to be able to be taking in information and for them to have a, a strong working memory. They need to be able to pay attention to what they are learning as they are in stimulating situations or as they are encountering new information.
So that word stimulation. Yep. I think that's a very key point there. To get them engaged, to keep them in the flow of learning, to be wanting to know more, to connect things. That looks like something that's extremely important for gifted learners because they have sort of possibly in certain areas different levels of needs in that sense. The needs of complexity, the needs of going in deep into detail, sometimes even going down rabbit holes.
I want to cycle back on one thing that you just said about for them to connect information. That's part of their rehearsing and encoding information into long-term memory. Is gifted learners have a greater capacity to be able to take in new information and be able to connect it to existing schema. If they learn something new, they can say, oh, I see how this fits with that other thing that I already know. Oh, I can make these relationships. I can build this onto that. I had a student in 6th grade years ago who was learning about Maslow's hierarchy of needs with me. And then I overheard a conversation where he was conversing with other peers saying, well, this whole development of ancient civilization thing, it's just like that Maslow's hierarchy. First, they use their resources and then they develop a culture. And he was working right up the Maslow's hierarchy in terms of ancient civilizations and how they rise. It was fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And I had not told him that.
Right. And it makes the lesson so much more interesting, gives them more reason to learn it, to be interested in it, to want to know more about it.
So that's part of their own rehearsing and encoding that they can build on what they know. That's a gifted way of thinking for them to be able to do that and then retrieve in that way and bring things back around. But in order for them to be able to do those things, we have to be able to get their attention in the first place. And that can be a challenge because a lot of these kids have come up through school not really having to pay attention very much to what's going on in the classroom.
And why would that be the case?
If the classroom lessons are not sufficiently challenging for them or sufficiently rigorous, they already know the information. They can give it minimal attention and still get the star on the paper and still succeed as far as the academic standards without engaging themselves very much at all.
Without fully
And then,
utilizing their capacity to think.
yes. But then what will happen very, very likely is they will reach a point where they do hit a level of challenge, whether it's in long division or whether it's in algebra and trigonometry. That's where it was for me, or wherever it is that they hit that first wall and they suddenly feel that they can't succeed anymore because now they can't just phone it in. They can't just give it a little bit of attention. Matt Zakreski calls this their performance cliff, that suddenly they feel that they've lost their edge, that they're no longer gifted, that they're no longer capable because they have no skills of stamina, of attention. They don't know how to bring their resources, their vast intellectual resources, their gifts to bear on the situation in front of them because they haven't had to.
Yeah, haven't had to, and there were a lot of missing links as well because they weren't questioning enough. There was gaps that weren't filled. That was actually part of the fundamentals of learning as well. That maybe other peers would have had because they did it the normal way, but these kids tend to skip, right? Because they already knew, so they didn't really have to go much, spend much time on it, to think much about it.
It could be skipping foundation steps, but I think even more than that, it's the affective process of lacking the the strategies for attention and focus. From early ages, I give them challenging problems at age appropriate ways, but challenging questions, things to engage their attention and cause them to focus and wrestle with a concept or a question that does not have a simple, easy answer, that they can move on and say, oh, I've got it, I'm ready, and keep
So
going.
you sort of like give them food for thought. You sort of needle them and like just give them sort of open-ended ideas, and I think it's quite important to do that when we do lesson planning as educators, right? Because I think the first question would be, why do the students need to even learn this? What's the point? What's the purpose? And I think first and foremost, the teacher themselves need to know the purpose and to see how relevant it is to the students, and then to get the students to find relevance with it. And that's probably how you can challenge and engage and stimulate.
I think you're bringing up a very important point with relevance, in that when students ask a teacher, why are we learning this? So often teachers feel threatened by that. They feel challenged or disrespected. And that is not what's going on. It's the student saying, I need to have a sense of purpose here. I need to know why we're doing this so that I can invest myself. So that is so important, to be able to explain to them, yes, we are doing this because. We might be doing this because it's foundational to something that you will be doing later. We might be doing this because this will prepare you for life. We might be doing this because it's training your brain. But we have to have a reason.
Yeah, so that's really key point for gifted learners, and it works for all learners as well, but especially gifted. They need it.